The discovery of an ancient burial site in Turkey breathed new life into a legend. Midas, the mythical king whose touch turned everything to gold, may have been flesh and blood. In an underground tomb, the bones of a king were found, along with a glittering pile of dirty dishes. There was no gold, but the dishes held the remains of his funeral feast, ancient scraps of food that are now giving up their secrets. If the feast can be recreated from handfuls of dust, what might it reveal about the man behind the myth? The markets of modern-day Turkey. It's been a while since I was here. I'm Fuchsia Dunlop. I've always been passionate about food and cooking and have travelled the world to study it.
Really fresh, really nice, juicy.
Living here as a student whetted my appetite for Middle Eastern food and history.
This is interesting. Bu ne?
Bamya.
Bamya. Okra. Okra. Tiny, tiny baby okra. Never seen them so small.
So I'm delighted to be back to recreate an ancient meal, the feast of King Midas.
Well, here we are in one of the main markets of the Turkish capital, Ankara, and it's a riot of colour with all these amazing fruits and vegetables. But of course, many of them just weren't around in King Midas's time, and we're talking 2,700 years ago. So of course that was before corn, potatoes, tomatoes, all these things came from the Americas. But of course there are some kind of threads of continuity, some things that are grown locally that would probably have been around at the time. So we're going to have a look and see what we can find.
I'm Ralph Little. I was a medical student before I became an actor, so I've got a background in science and an interest in archaeology, and that's why my job here is to track down the facts about the feast. Then the plan is I'll feed them to Fuchsia so she can fill in the gaps. But this is experimental archaeology, and Fuchsia will need all the chef's experience to make this ancient feast in modern times. Some ancient text, like Homer's Iliad, refers to grand figures being mourned for 9 days, and on the 10th, a public feast being held.
So that's how long I've got, 10 days to make this feast. And Ralph's invited over 100 guests to give it the taste test.
Turkey has always been an important trading route, trade that included foodstuffs. In the 8th century BC, King Midas ruled a kingdom called Mushki that filled the western half of modern Turkey. He lived at the same time as the ancient Greeks, who later called him Midas and his kingdom Phrygia. Its capital was the citadel of Gordian. It was a wealthy and powerful nation, but over time, it all disappeared. Until the 1890s, engineers planning the Istanbul to Baghdad railway rediscovered Midas's kingdom.
The railwaymen had unwittingly unearthed a valley filled with tombs, all linked to the lost palace of Gordian. Its most famous inhabitant was Midas, king of the Mushkis, a man who the Greeks would weave into their legends, the king with the proverbial golden touch.
Archaeologists raced to the scene, but it was 50 years before a team from the University of Pennsylvania found the king's tomb in the largest burial mound in this Valley of the Dead. It was 1957. Rodney Young and a team that included local miners tunneled through the mound into an intact burial chamber where they found the remains of a king. There was no inscription on the tomb, but the find was believed to be Midas of the Golden Touch. It was one of the most spectacular archaeological discoveries ever made. The Iron Age king lay on a pile of dyed cloth. Surprisingly, there wasn't a scrap of gold in the tomb, but it was crammed with fine wooden furniture and a stunning set of bronze dishes and bowls that held a treasure of a different kind.
The dishes were dirty. They contained the remains of a funeral feast that had marked the king's death. The airtight conditions meant not all the congealed food had turned to dust, so it was scraped off, bagged, labelled,
and put away, because 50 years ago there were only limited techniques to analyse it. But now, science is catching up with history. Once I've got the facts, Fuchsia can pull together a menu. But to do it right, she also has to do her own market research. I'm going now to meet a man called Pat McGovern from the University of Pennsylvania. And he's a leading expert in the field of molecular archaeology, which in his words is the chemical analysis of ancient organic remains. Pat is a senior scientist from UPenn, which still has a team here in Turkey working at the Midas Mound. Pat's findings are going to guide Fuchsia in making the funeral feast. And when he tastes the food, we're hoping it'll give him more insight into the man who was buried in that tomb.
Well, we're working on some samples from a tomb dated about 700 BC in which it's believed that King Midas himself was buried. This is a very rare finding.
Right.
The tomb at Gordian was essentially hermetically sealed off, so we had excellent preservation, and we had about 5.5 pounds of the food remains.
Really?
If you can imagine that. And another half pound or pound of the beverage remains. I mean, this is, you know, as the any liquid evaporates, it's going to form a solid precipitate. If you kind of imagine a homogenized stew sitting around for a while and drying out, you might get these kind of brown, contorted-looking clumps.
When the scrapings were first taken, only carbon and nitrogen could be identified. But once Pat got involved, he introduced new techniques like infrared spectroscopy to track the ancient molecules. Then, using experience and a bit of intuition, he matched their chemical signatures with modern-day ingredients. The result was a set of food fingerprints that gave him the elements of the actual feast.
There's a lot of trial and error that goes into it because, I mean, after you do the searches, you may come up with a lot of different possible ingredients.
Red herrings.
And you've got to then work your way back through the spectra and look at each individual peak to see if it could be accounted for by this or that ingredient. And then if you find that something's missing, what do you do? If something additional is there, what do you do? And so you have to just play with the different possibilities. This is basically the first time that ancient foods and drinks have been reconstructed from chemical data like this, and where we put together a whole ancient feast.
Pat's work revealed that lamb or goat had been used in a stew along with honey and grapes or perhaps wine.
You know, sort of a lamb-goat version of coq au vin.
Right, okay, fair enough.
Look at this, kind of oozing. So a sheep's eyeball, not something that I'd ever particularly desired to eat, but you know, if you're going to eat the sheep, then why not eat everything? So let's have a try. Surprisingly good. It's kind of creamy and yeah, quite good. I'm surprised. I have to say this is actually rather delicious. Should we have a look at the tongue now?
We have a group of compounds called polycyclic aromatic compounds which show that the meat was originally barbecued. And this produced what are called polycyclic aromatics, you know, kind of a complicated, complex-sounding name for what actually gives barbecued meat its special flavor. It can also produce some cancer if you take too much of it.
Hexagonal carbon structure,
And so it appears that they barbecued up the meat and then they cut it off the bone because we have no evidence of bone found in the ancient residue.
All right.
It's coming out. Okay, great. Got a whole lot of things going on here. From there. I want to eat the tip of the tongue. Very tasty. It's not as rubbery as I thought it would be.
Once they had that into the mixture, they took lentils. You know, you got to finish it off with some spices. So it's got also fennel or anise. Now, there's a particular compound called anisic acid, which shows that fennel is present, or anise. And then we've got some other terpenoid compounds, which would have given a kind of peppery flavor. But it would have had to be probably native to central Turkey.
Yeah,
It wasn't, you know, they didn't have cayenne or any kind of pepper from India at this point. So
I'll just send Fuchsia out to buy some terpenoid compounds and see what she comes up with. See what she can do. Tell you what, we've come a long way since Indiana Jones, haven't we? All he had was a whip and a hat.
Well, he wasn't working in infrared spectrometry.
I'll tell you what, he wouldn't have been able to do this for toffee. So Pat's identified the key ingredients for a royal meat and lentil stew. The trouble is, he can't tell what proportions they were used in, how much stew was made for the feast, or most importantly, what it tasted like.
Oh, it's wonderful. Wonderful. Really fragrant. It's very, very delicate taste.
The question is, will Fuchsia be able to use Pat's clues to produce a feast that's halfway decent as well as authentic? Her first step is to actually make a big meal, a wedding feast, so she can work out quantities.
Yeah, I just have this feeling that, we're having this lovely time going to weddings, pottering around the markets, and then suddenly we're going to find that we have to feed 100 people.
Yeah, it has occurred to me, actually.
And, we've got to do all the shopping.
It has occurred to me. It's just that thing of... Oh, sorry, hold on.
Oh, can you stay on the road, please?
Sorry, door.
I've only got one chance at this ancient feast, and I want it to be right. The first thing I have to do is work out the right balance of ingredients and the amounts I'll need for over 100 people. I've heard that rural weddings in Turkey cater for huge numbers by serving a traditional lamb stew. That made me think of Midas, so that's where we're off to now.
Stick by that, do you?
Was that the right turning we were
I don't know.
Meat was a precious commodity in Midas's time, used for special occasions, just as it is today. Tonton Ertan, the chef at this wedding, is making his meat go further by serving it with rice and pulses.
How many people are we cooking for today?
500.
500. Everybody in the village.
Everybody, yeah.
All the family and the friends.
500.
Everybody. So how many sheep have gone into preparing the food for this party?
Six lamb.
Six
lamb.
Yeah. So this is 500 people with 6 sheep. So one sheep is, we needed a bit more than one sheep for 100 people. So I guess if we're feeding 120, say, for our recreation of the feast, we're going to need, more than a sheep anyway, probably 2.
Maths isn't Fuchsia's strong point. I just hope cooking is. Working out the quantities is only one of her headaches, so while she's doing her homework, I might as well enjoy myself with the boys.
Yes.
Now this is my kind of wedding. Guns, cars and Man United colours.
We're going to make a pilaf, which is a dish which begins by frying in oil.
She's inside cooking and I'm messing around in a procession. Got me prezi, got me card. It's not half bad, this Turkish business.
It's a local tradition to give gold to the groom. So with the gold wedding pin I'm giving him, this guy's already got more than Midas was found with.
Little less, okay.
Chuck some on there, love. What are you going to do? You're going to go to the women, I'll go to the fellas. Oh, you go to the fellas, it'll make the day.
Country weddings go on for 3 or 4 days, and people have travelled miles to get here. It would have been the same for Midas's funeral, with priests, diplomats and traders spilling in over days to pay their respects. I think that's why they served a stew. It can be reheated and not lose its flavour.
This all tastes pretty good. It's a nice dish, very simple, and it's such fun sitting here with all these people eating together like this, using our hands. It's interesting too because, of course, the things that were found in Midas's tomb, we had lots of sort of serving bowls and things, but not any implements for eating. So I'm kind of this use of the bread to pick up a lamb stew could be quite helpful in our recreation of the feast, I think.
Well, this is the first time Fuchsia's cooked and it's actually not bad. Really is very nice. Obviously, when I see her, I'll tell her it's rubbish.
So now I know how much lamb I'll need, but making that wedding stew has made me wonder why the Midas meat was barbecued. At least Rouse discovered why they buried their dirty dishes.
Barbecuing in Midas's time would have meant roasting the meat on a spit. Fuchsia's challenging the evidence for this, but I've told her that this feast has to be authentic.
It's interesting actually, that looks as if it's been partly browned, do you see? And then stewed.
Pretty barbecue sort of thing.
It doesn't make sense to me that you would kind of spit roast a lamb. They were talking about the spit roast, kind of splendid thing.
Yeah.
And then wait for it to cool a bit, cut it up, and then make a stew. It doesn't make sense to me.
McGovern very, very definitely said the meat was barbecued.
I know, but...
Why would you bother spit roasting it all if you were then just going to throw it in with everything else anyway?
But the idea that I've got is that perhaps if we spit roast it, okay, with a sort of marinade, which we could include the honey and the wine and the other things that were found. But also, don't you think it's more splendid, like for a funeral, a royal feast, to have...
They would have they'd make a big deal of
it.
it, wouldn't they? They'd have this huge, big spit roasted lamb.
It feels grander than a stew to me.
I think the roasted lamb could simply have been carved from the spit and then served on top of the lentils, rather like the food at the wedding feast. But I think I should check this with Pat.
When we did the analysis, we had 18 different vessels that had the food residue in it.
Yes.
And no matter which vessel we chose, we got the same chemical results. So it seems to be a very homogeneous mixture, best explained by having these things mixed right from the beginning, at the feast itself.
So, but they could be, for example, mixed after they've been cooked. They don't. There's nothing
True.
to say that they should have been actually cooked together, right?
No, there's nothing to say that.
Okay.
But the final end product and what was really
Is a
served
pretty-
up to the mourners was a stew, we think.
No, use a bit of artistic
Right,
license.
you have
maybe.
to sort of use some artistic license here, I think, and take these ingredients and look at modern Turkish cooking books even, which preserve a lot of the tradition, and then play with the different possibilities, because we just don't know.
Yeah.
Is there anything that we're missing? Anything that we haven't got here that stands out and you go, you've not got whatever?
Well, there's some fruits that you might toss in here, apples, cherries.
How about figs?
Figs.
Apricots?
Well, no, apricots come a lot later.
The thing that I was thinking about is that I've seen people here, like for example, sheep's head in the market, they scatter it with dried thyme and salt. Is thyme something that I could use as a final dressing for the stew? But
Yes.
that wouldn't be incompatible with
Thyme
your
was
evidence.
available to them, yes.
Okay, and it wouldn't. The fact that you didn't find traces of thyme doesn't rule it out.
Some of the ancient botanical evidence definitely indicates that thyme was available to them.
I've finally got a menu for my feast, a herby-honeyed meat stew with lentils and wine, as well as a spit roast and bread. And as side dishes, I'm planning a rough hummus and a broad bean paste. And I also want to serve a halva sweetmeat, because sweet things were rare and precious in Midas's time, fitting for a state occasion. Pat said it's all authentic. But before I cook this meal, I want to go to the site where the feast originally took place and enter the tomb of the king who was honoured by it, the man generally believed to have been King Midas.
I'll bring up the rear. It's a bit freaky, really.
I've never been in a burial mound before.
No. Midas was found deep inside this mound in a burial chamber. He was lying on an open coffin made from a single cedar tree. It's thought he'd lain in state outside the mound while the funeral feast went on around him. There were no doors or windows, so it's reckoned that after the feast ended, he was lowered into the chamber through an open roof. Then it was sealed and covered with tons of earth.
Here's the entrance.
It's fantastic, isn't it?
The thing that really amazes me about this is that, when they opened it up, there was this incredible stench of kind of rancid animal fat from the remains of the beast after 2,500 years.
I know. Actually, the smell's probably just a modern myth, but the site certainly took the archaeologists' breath away. They'd found the oldest intact wooden structure in the world. Lack of oxygen and low moisture levels had preserved the contents, but the chamber had wood rot caused by high levels of nitrogen that were present. Scientists think much of that gas was produced by the decomposing body of Midas and caused by a meat-rich diet. But post-mortem gas wasn't the only clue to his eating habits.
The king's bones revealed he was between 60 and 65 when he died. That's at least 20 years older than most people lived. His skull formed the basis of this facial reconstruction, and anthropologist Erksin Gülech used it to find out about his healthy diet.
He must be a healthy man, because in this age he was still having his teeth.
A whole set of teeth.
Yes, all his teeth were unworn.
They were not worn down, they were still quite sharp, you mean?
Yes, although he was fairly an old age. So it shows us that he was eating very fine, nutritious food.
Very soft food.
Yes.
So you think quite highly processed food for this period?
Yes, very special for a king, I think, because although I have been working on this subject over 25 years, I have never seen a case like this.
So sort of, more ordinary people, they'd have their teeth ground down, would they, by kind of coarser food, and they wouldn't have been as healthy anyway,
yes,
as well nourished.
So.
That's decided me. Pat McGovern couldn't determine if the meat in the stew was goat or lamb, but I'm going for lamb. It's not as tough on the teeth. Food fit for this king. His skull also reveals a possible explanation for one of the myths about Midas. According to the Greek storytellers, he had a golden touch, but they also said he had ears like a donkey, ass's ears that he hid under a hat. His skull shows that as a child, Midas probably had his head tightly bound to make it grow distinctively pointy and royal. Erskine thinks it affected his ears.
You can see the asymmetry between the ear canals. You see the left is a little bit lower and the right is up.
So would his actual ears have been a little bit lopsided, perhaps?
Yes.
So, I mean, we could perhaps speculate that if he had these rather peculiar-looking ears, he might have wanted to cover them up, you know, perhaps by wearing a hat, as in the legend. So Midas with ass's ears, we're seeing perhaps a possible explanation for the growth of this myth. Ralph!
What?
Ralph, look at your ears. Look!
Oh, put him back. No, I said I'm sorry, put him back.
I had no idea.
Oh, that's really childish.
No. We don't know much about the life of Midas, but he was the inspiration for the Greek mythmakers. And the really funny thing is that although the historical texts show him to have been an impressive ruler, much admired by his rivals and revered by his own subjects, I mean, look at all the treasure they buried him with. And yet, just a few hundred years later, the Greek mythmakers were portraying him as a greedy, stupid man, of course known to most of us as the king who could turn everything he touched into gold.
One day Midas found a satyr at the bottom of his garden and he rescued it and fed it for 10 days with a massive feast. And now the satyrs are part of the entourage of Dionysus, who was the Greek god of wine. So as a reward for his kindness, Dionysus offered Midas any reward that he wanted. So, being a bit greedy, he asked that everything he touched should be turned to gold.
Maybe Midas's golden touch was just a story made up by the ancient Greeks. Or perhaps there was some truth in it. The vessels found in the tomb were bronze, a mixture of copper, tin and zinc. The zinc made them shine like brass, so maybe they were mistaken for gold.
Fuchsia.
And there's a golden connection with the drink served at his funeral. Scrapings from the drinking vessels revealed chemical traces of brewing with grain, which means beer, fermentation of Middle Eastern grapes, so wine was in there as well, and there was also evidence of beeswax, which means honey was mixed in. Together they made a strong punch, but there was something else.
There's still some things that are mysteries as far as we're concerned. You know, for instance, the yellow color that you see here. In fact, if you were to touch that, which you know, we won't do that because it might contaminate the sample, you would have a yellowish residue that would be left on your hands, almost like a dye. And we're thinking that this is possibly related to saffron, which is one of the most expensive spices in the world. Some of the finest ancient saffron, in fact, came from Turkey.
Efendim, saffron var mı? Teşekkürler. Real saffron is actually made of the stigmas of a crocus flower, which is cultivated all over West Asia and in Spain now as well. And each flower only has about 3 stigmas, and they have to be gathered by hand for just a few days in October. And they're then dried and partially fermented. But, I mean, if you can imagine that, I think it's 150,000 stigma to give 1 kilogram of saffron. So it's an incredibly labour-intensive spice.
So, I mean, there's no modern equivalent to that, really, is there? Not that I know of.
Not today. I mean, you get people making mead and sometimes mixing together different components like this, but it's pretty rare to get all 3 put together.
That's going to be very tricky to recreate.
I've assigned the drink element of the feast to Ralph. Thought it might be more his thing. Jean-Luc Collin is the expert nose at a leading Turkish winery. He's going to mix up some Midas cocktails to try and recreate the funeral drink.
One of the goals is to get a high alcoholic content. Certainly for ancient peoples, this is a very special thing to have the mind-altering effect of alcohol, but also to have a sweet substance, because sweet things were rather rare in antiquity.
In Midas's time, you couldn't buy sugar from the shops, but wild honey was a good source of sweetness. It was prized and not easy to find, special enough for a royal feast. And mixed with beer and fermenting wine, it would have really pumped up the alcohol level. Then there was the saffron.
Have you ever done this before, Jean-Luc?
No.
You never put any saffron in anything?
Saffron even has analgesic effects. It'll put you to sleep if you get too much of it. And also some mind-altering effects. So what do you think, Jean-Luc? Is it moving in the right direction?
There we have now we have a different flavor coming from the saffron, but it's not covering all the barley and muscat flavor.
Try that. There's quite a lot of
it's not
saffron
too
in there.
much.
Yeah, you really can pick up the saffron. Just,
Yeah.
Yeah, you can.
It needs a little bit time to
Oh,
solve.
sorry.
Ah. Now the saffron has well solved inside, so we have a huge flavor of saffron and barley first. So it's difficult to find the wine flavor directly with the nose, but in mouth, when you breathe and when you taste it and you breathe a little bit like this, you can get the wine taste.
It's all right, I'll manage.
Our Midas brew, an intoxicating mixture of saffron, honey, beer and wine. The funeral drink may have given mourners a mind-altering experience that made them feel in touch with the spirit world. Around 100 drinking bowls were found in the tomb, and there were 3 huge bronze cauldrons that together held around 400 litres of drink. If there were just 100 guests, each of them could have drunk 4 litres. That's nearly 8 pints each of the mind-blowing brew. Our feast is now 4 days away. In the interest of authenticity, I've got metalworkers making our own cauldrons to exactly the same dimensions. It is going to be some party.
This is some sort of gutting room. There's
In 3 days, I've got to make this feast, and I need so much meat I've come directly to the abattoir. I'm buying tender lamb, not mutton, but I can't help calling it sheep. And this will be the first time I've seen an animal killed.
sheep. Okay, sheep cutting. This is where the sheep are slaughtered, which is the next treating stall.
The slaughter of animals to be eaten may have played a role in Midas's funeral rites. I'm nervous about being here, but I want to get a proper feel for the funeral feast.
Over there. There's blood pouring out all over the floor and over me if I'm not careful. This is really horrible. It's still warm. It's still warm. I can't believe it. It gives you some idea of the kind of the visceral feeling of slaughter of, you know, the fattened sheep for the feast, for this great celebration, probably for people who didn't eat much meat most of the time. They probably mostly lived on pulses and vegetables and things. And for people who were eating such a simple diet in an everyday way, it would have been, you know, a festive dish, special treat. Kilo? Ne kadar? 20 kilos. And people, 40 kişi? Yeah, and it'll feed about 40 people, so we're going to need about 3 of these, and I hope I don't have to see them all killed. So, yeah.
It's not Old Trafford, but my goal here is to find a location for the feast that's as authentic as possible. We're at the base of the King's Burial Mound, a couple of miles away from the Citadel. At almost 1,000 feet wide and 175 feet high, it was precise engineering, the Phrygian equivalent of the Egyptian pyramids that were built 2,000 years earlier.
When he died, we were saying about how it was all built up and ready before he died.
Yeah.
So then he'll have died and they'll have had this big feast somewhere. And nobody's quite sure where. But I think the general consensus amongst the archaeologists is it was somewhere around here, at the base of the mound. Now,
And then they could have kind of finished and then pretty quickly put everything
exactly,
in.
yeah. Well, what do you need? Because you're going to be your food girl, so what are you going to need to do it around here?
Well, I suppose we need water, don't we?
We're
We
over
need
at the
running
cafe
water.
there.
Well, they'll have water and space and...
Water, space, and with a bit of luck, cooking facilities as well.
Yeah.
We agreed?
Yep.
All right.
Tomorrow is the day of the feast, and there are some big cooking challenges ahead. Pat said the lamb was cooked with plenty of honey, but it's such a rich meat it doesn't feel right to me. I haven't been able to find whole bulbs of fennel for the stew, and I've no idea where I'm going to marinate the sheep. I don't know yet how I'm going to season the hummus or give a royal flavour to dishes like broad bean paste, and I'm not sure either how I'm going to make the bland lentils taste exciting. I'm trying to keep things authentic, but I won't know if it's going to work until I do it. I might end up with a feast that no one wants to eat. Anyway, at least I've found somewhere to soak the chickpeas and broad beans overnight, so I can start cooking as soon as possible today.
Hey, Ralph. Come on. It's 2. You can do the heavy work, guys.
Well, we're about to find out if our preparations paid off. The nearest town to the tomb is Palatli, and we've had a lot of help from its mayor, including this wagon and about 20 cooking assistants to help Fuchsia out.
And I'm hoping we'll have enough dried cow and sheep dung to use as a cooking fuel, just as it would have been in Midas's time. Should give an interesting flavour to the spit roast, if the spit roast guys actually arrive.
Whoops. We're going to have 2 spits if these guys show up, right? So we would have 1 cooking fire and then another one for a spit here. Chickpeas we've got. Did you get dill? Honey, pomegranate syrup.
Hazelnuts.
Oh, raisins. Apples, pears. Do we have enough fruit? Figs. Sultanas, raisins, the dried cherries. Well done. We need more garlic. We need more onions. The lentils have mysteriously disappeared. We've got most of the food now. We're just waiting for the lambs to be delivered, and I'm hoping that they're going to be what we want, with the heads on and the feet on and so on. And of course that the people to show us how to do a spit roast are going to arrive. Oh, the sheep.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Oh,
great.
Şimdi bunların makineyle kesim olduğu için.
This is chopped dill and spring onions to go into our fava broad bean sort of pate. I just love the smell of dill. We've just boiled the broad beans, which were soaked overnight, with some chopped raw onion and olive oil and some salt, and also a secret ingredient which Eileen told me, which is a little bit of honey, just to give it a slightly sweet taste. Teşekkürler.
Honey features heavily in this royal feast, so it seemed the right thing to do.
Broad beans are something that we think that they may have eaten in Midas's time. They were certainly keen on pulses, and they're particularly interesting for a funeral feast because in the ancient Greeks and the ancient Egyptians all regarded them as unclean and sort of associated with them with death. It may be because they were associated with wind. In fact, the Greek word for wind is the same as the word for soul. Halva's used to describe a whole lot of sweetmeats which are very popular in Turkey and in fact other countries in the Middle East. They're kind of very intensely sweet and rich. Sesame seeds and pine nuts. The idea is to fry these in the butter until they go ever so slightly golden, and then we're going to add the flour. Now, I don't want to burn the pine nuts or the sesame seeds. They burn quite easily, then they'll get bitter and unpleasant. So just got to keep an eye on them till they're just a bit golden.
What's that you're up to?
Ralph! You're back!
I bought some more dung.
Wow!
So I just crumble it in.
Fast. Yeah.
Hard work.
Yeah, come on, man. Chuck it in. Ah! Oh, quick, it's getting really thick now. Okay, we're chucking in the flour and we're going to toast it gently till it's cooked and slightly golden. Ralph! Ralph, what are you doing?
I met some guys and they said they'd help us if I played football with them, so I was earning their trust.
Look, oh yeah, you can say that. Can you do me a favour and get the sheep out of the fridge at the museum? But it's really urgent because look, the sun's sinking fast.
All right. Hurry up!
This lamb stew is quite a curious thing because Pat McGovern found traces of honey and sweetness and he thinks it was quite a sweet dish. But in modern cookery, many cultures, many cuisines, they use quite sharp taste to cut the rich oiliness of the lamb. You know, all over the Balkans and this part of the world, they use raw chopped onion with cooked lamb. And, you know, in China, they tend to cook it with spring onions. In England, you serve it with a mint and vinegar sauce. So it sort of goes against the grain to use so much honey, but we're trying to recreate an ancient dish from archaeological evidence, and I guess their taste may have been different. We'll see how it tastes.
It's hard to guess how long everything's going to take to cook on open fires. I'm still worried about the quantities. I was told 3 lambs should feed the 100 or so Ralph's invited, but I got 4 to be sure.
Flavours.
Any garlic going on this?
No.
Do his neck, doing his head.
Great. So this is our mixture of pekmez grape syrup, a little honey, and water. Watch it fizz. Look, it all fizzes up. Oh, it's delicious. It's like treacle tart or something.
It's like a cake, but not dry at all.
Yeah, you know when you always want to eat the Christmas pudding mixture and stuff before it's cooked because it's so delicious. It's
Actually,
like
that's what it is. Basically, it's cake mix.
Yeah.
That hasn't hardened yet.
This is the broad bean paste, which has been simmering and radical.
Looks like watercress.
God, it's magnificent.
Fuchsia doesn't look very pasty.
Oh, it's wonderful. That is so delicious. This wonderful halva is finally ready, and we're just moulding it into little kind of sweetmeats so we can give them. Well, we can pile them up on platters, but you know, and everyone can have one or two.
We've run out of daylight, and we've not even finished preparing the lamb.
Now the final libation, wine.
Final what?
Libation.
He's looking at me funny. I don't like the way he's eyeballing.
God, I've got goo all over my shoe.
I love the way you don't mind it on your hands, but your shoe. Whoa.
Head first.
Yeah, it's got to be.
What's the more?
Oh no, is that all the marinade running out of his neck?
We'll touch, don't. Yeah.
Hold on.
Get the fat in. Right. Iki. This whole evening has become completely surreal. I can't think that I've been to an abattoir. I've seen animals killed for the first time. I've spent the whole day cooking over an open fire. And now I'm helping to put entire dead sheep covered in honey and wine and spices into bags for the night. And this really, it's only the beginning, because tomorrow we've got the feast.
Please work.
Well, look, that's not doing badly.
Is that dung burning?
You know what, I think it is.
Yeah?
Well done.
Well done. Very nice. Good work.
Oh! Of course, we're using this cooking method to create the this kind of black. Oh, the sort of blackened outside layer, which will give the kind of toasty compounds which were found in the food in Midas's tomb. Shall we?
Can we walk a bit faster, please?
It's going to be interesting to see what this rather weird combination of marinade ingredients tastes like. I'm going to.
Walk a bit faster, please.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, at least it's been kept cold all night.
Walk quicker, please, Fuchsia.
It's all going to be roasted, so.
Walk quicker, please, Fuchsia.
All right, sorry.
Thank you. I'm going to drop it.
And I'm really curious to see how you get a skewer through a whole sheet. Oh, God. Straight up its bottom.
Fuchsia needs bread for the feast so that people can scoop up a stew. We know that there's a type of underground oven still used in Turkey that dates back thousands of years. It was originally used by nomadic tribes in Central Asia, but it's been overtaken by modern methods. Not every house has one.
What a strange tail, look, just a great lump of fat. They're famous, these, particularly in Persian cooking. They're really prized for the oil, which you render down and then just use as lard, as a kind of cooking fat. It's supposed to have a much better, more delicate flavour than the normal sheep fat.
I've finally found Gulbahar Akdag, who's actually baking bread for her family right now.
Sorry?
How heavy is the can?
How heavy is the can?
How heavy is the can?
Fantastic. Okay, just flattening it out with my fingers, and she's going to give it a little bit of a roll now. Look at that. It's all right, it's all right, it's going.
These ovens are great for making bread because the clay walls give off an even heat, producing temperatures of up to 400 degrees centigrade.
And you can barely tell the difference. We're cooking now. I got. Oh dear. Well, this is basically.
Yeah.
I tell you what, it's so hot. I can't see a thing. And it's got it's just a wood fired at the bottom. It's got embers down in the bottom there, and it's absolutely. I mean, it's hotter than hot, and all it is a clay. It's clay around the edges of the hole, and what happens is they just do this dough. It's very glutinous, just very sticky.
Pancake?
Yeah, I'll pancake it. Yeah. And they do this,
Okay.
and it's very glutinous. So she's lovely, isn't it? She's never had so much fun in her life. And then basically they put it on that that little cloth thing and slap it, there we go, and they slap it against the side of the clay wall, and then women with asbestos hands pick it off, and it forms what you see over there in that little pile. And that, we think, might be the best way to make bread for this Midas feast. Oh my God, that's hot. Ah! No, that one's not good enough. I think I'm in trouble. Was that good?
Well, we know that the stew in Midas's tomb was made with honey and with grape. So I've come up with this baste, which is a mixture of honey and also pekmez, which is this boiled down grape juice, kind of molasses. And I'm going to brush it onto the lamb with sprigs of thyme, which grows wild in this area and probably has done for thousands of years. So it's just the kind of aromatic flavour which they might have used in the original stew. Oh. This thyme is wonderful. What's the time now? This is incredibly heavy. This is a wheelbarrow full of dung cakes. We want to put them on the fire because that's possibly what they would have used for fuel in King Midas's time. So, right, on with the stew.
Struggling.
We have got so much left to do, Ralph.
I know, well, let's crack on. In a few hours, people will start arriving for the feast. And Fuchsia spending her time talking.
I thought there'd be more, actually. We're frying the onion in the sheep tail fat. We're then going to add some garlic and sizzle that for a while, and some fennel seeds, because fennel seeds, or fennel or anise, was found in the remains of Midas's tomb. Oh, yeah. That's about it, isn't
Look
it?
at it.
Okay, great. Oh. Wonderful.
Oh, looks so nice.
Yeah!
It smells so nice. Huh?
Yeah, the fennel is it's really nice. The fennel is a very interesting spice with these lentils, quite unusual. And the onions and the garlic sort of liven it up and give it a really kind of rich taste. And of course, when the lamb goes in, I think it's going to be wonderful. Also, the lentils are quite a bland pulse, and the tail fat just makes them something rather rich and delicious. So we've had terrible problems crushing hummus without a liquidizer or anything to grind it with.
Gorgeous.
So we've basically been crushing it by hand and trying to force it through a sieve. But anyway, it's still quite coarse, but it's going to taste delicious. Now, normally you'd add a lot of tahini. It's crushed roasted sesame seeds, which gives it a rather delicious, nutty, slightly bitter taste. We're also going to put in plenty of garlic. Now, normally, when I'm making hummus at home, I would make it with lemon juice, but lemons weren't probably available to the cooks of the time we're talking about. So we're going to try using, I'm going to try using another souring agent. There are various options. Sumac, which is a kind of berry which is used a great deal in seasoning, in salads, all kinds of cold dishes. Pomegranate juice. Now, we've got the seeds here, and I'm going to have to squeeze them through muslin to get the juice into the hummus. Ah, look at it, splashing pink. It's going to be an interesting coloured hummus. What a colour. Oh, I've never seen pink hummus before.
In the end, I had to use sumac as well.
I think news of us has got around, and people are just turning up out of the blue. This guy in a red shirt has just turned up asking to lend his support, and he's got his pan pipes with him, and still not sure if we'll get it done in time.
First taste of this.
Fuchsia, there's a lot of rubbish in this. Do you want... do you want to take all the glaze bit? Oh my God.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yum, yum.
Hot, sorry.
No, it's okay. We must put some in the stew. Scrum, yum.
Sedimented a little bit, but I'm not sure if that's the beer stone that Pat McGovern was talking about. Oh, good man. I noticed you staying away from the old cooking, but as soon as you saw some drink, you were in there.
Wonderful.
Let's go.
Wait a sec. We've got a problem here because the lentil stew was supposed to be quite thick so that people could just literally eat it with bread, but it's kind of too liquid because I left these guys and I didn't properly explain, so it's going to be a little tricky to eat. This is really a bit of a pain. I don't know why they added so much water. I mean, it needed a little water to stop it drying out, but this is quite
The
difficult.
spit roast might not be the centrepiece you're intending.
Really?
They've carved it on the stick.
Okay, Ralph, try and get them to bring the whole thing on the table if they can, actually.
Want them to what? Stop cutting. That's what I thought. Is it supposed to go as a whole thing? Stop, mate,
They
please.
seem to have, we thought we'd have a whole lamb on the table, but they've actually already carved it. Hey, what a fiasco, huh? Okay.
In front of the cauldrons?
Yeah, behind.
Okay, wait.
And we want it at the highest elevation, so it'll kind of stand alongside the top of the table. No, just level with the table, actually.
We've teased the chemical clues from ancient food dried on serving vessels in a king's tomb. We've identified the ingredients of that funeral feast, and we're about to find out if Fuchsia's managed to put them together in a way that's edible and authentic.
Let's have another
But at least it's all done.
Yeah, here. That one there. High little high with something. Olives, green olives.
Okay.
That would nice. Ralph, come on. Hey, here we are.
We're happy. We've got everything.
Not bad, huh?
I think we've done it, apart from the little honey accidents dripping all down the table.
Yeah.
And the wasps.
Şerefe.
Şerefe.
Turkish toast.
Şerefe. Really is good. I did this, you know.
People are starting to arrive, but word of our feast has spread, and as well as the 100 or so dignitaries, food writers and archaeologists that I invited, we're being swamped by tourists and locals. Right now, there's around 300 of them.
Maybe the same thing happened at Midas's funeral. We'd originally imagined it was a wonderfully prepared feast for a set number of people arriving over several days. But if it was anything like this, then a stew would have been the perfect elastic meal.
Wonderful. We've served so many people already and we've hardly made a dent in this stew. There's so much of it. Okay, teşekkür.
It's absolute mayhem. It's nothing like we expected. Everybody's crowding in, everybody wants more. It's going down very well.
Ralph, I think it's got nice tender barbecue taste.
Yeah.
Meat is fine. Lentils delicious. Just think it needs a little more spice.
Pat McGovern's been following what we've done, and he's delighted. He's eating the funeral feast of King Midas, created from evidence that's 2,700 years old. For Pat, it's the test of all his lab work.
This is experimental archaeology. So you play with all these variables, and I think we've come up with some excellent interpretations. I mean, we've got high protein meat, high protein lentils. The drink is a fermentation. So this may actually explain why Midas lived to the ripe old age of 60 to 65. It's an ongoing experimentation, really, because, I mean, even with the drink, I mean, we could try different kinds of fermentation systems. For instance, this is a young wine. This is like a Beaujolais Nouveau.
Right.
We're just sort of celebrating the new year, in a sense. And, I mean, in a way, that's the way the funerary feast would have been thought of. It wasn't just a time of sadness. It was also a time to celebrate the great king of the Phrygians.
And celebrate they did. Midas had been their greatest king. They didn't skimp on his feast.
And after doing it myself, I finally understand why the lamb was spit roasted. It was the perfect way of ensuring there was always enough cooked meat on hand to add to that everlasting stew. And the ritual cooking of those sacrificial animals marked the passing of a king who was a man and not just a myth.
I don't mind that.
It's wonderful. Ralph, what are you doing?
Come on! Ow!
Ralph!
That's nice. I like it.
Anyone seen Ralph?
Ow!
Ralph? Are you anywhere? Ralph? Ralph!
Oh!
Ralph! What are you doing? Any chance you give me a hand?
Beautiful, isn't it?